Welcome to episode 1 of the Athletic Dad podcast. I'm your host, CT. First, let's talk about what this podcast is about and who it's for. So, I would be remiss to move forward without saying that it is somewhat of a selfish endeavor, that this podcast is first for me for multiple reasons, because I'm a lifelong learner. I'm obsessed with getting better and being better and presenting myself better and showing up better and learning and challenging my thoughts and growing from asking questions. So this is definitely a bit for me. And the other part that is for me with more of a long-term time horizon here is that my father, the original, who I would call the OG athletic dad, got me into training and fitness when I was 13 years old. I'm now 38 years old. My dad is healthy and strong and still works out. And I catch myself thinking, as a new father of a 6-month-old, I catch myself thinking, what would my dad have done in this situation? What would my dad do? What would advice to me or even himself at 38? What would that look like? And obviously we didn't have the technology when he was raising his other children or even raising me, as I'm the youngest of 4, but it would have been really cool to have some type of archive of videos of him speaking to me, Jackie, my sister, Jim, my brother, Jeff, my brother, Catherine, my mom, his parents. I think about how cool that would be, and I want to be able to provide that for my daughter, August, who is 6 months old now, and she is the reason I started the Athletic Dad YouTube channel. She is the reason that I changed my name on Instagram and social medias from the real CT to the Athletic Dad, and she is the reason that I'm starting a podcast, because I want to eventually, I'd like her to find these online, and I'm just interested in how it would be for her to come across this stuff and to find podcasts of me talking to her when she's 6 months and a year and 2 years and 3 years, and watch full-length workout YouTube videos when I was training when she was 6 months and 1 year and 2 years. And I think that would be really cool. So that ultimately is the reason why I started all the Athletic Dad activities, the Athletic Dad branding. It was because of her. Obviously, I wouldn't be a dad if it weren't for her, but she is the reason that I record these podcasts. She is the reason that I record the long form YouTube videos. And I think eventually this is going to be pretty cool for her to see one of these days. So what are we going to cover on this podcast? What are we going to talk about? Who are we going to talk to? So first, let me start by introducing myself. So if anybody's listening to this who doesn't know me, I imagine because this is episode 1, it'll just be friends and family listening to this. But my name is CT. I am a professional strength and conditioning coach. I've been in the field for 15 years. But before this, I was a multi-sport athlete growing up in high school in Indianapolis, Indiana. Carmel, Indiana is where I went to school. Then I went to Bloomington, Indiana, and played college football, where I eventually earned a scholarship. I walked on, then earned a scholarship my senior year, and then played 10 years professionally in the Arena Football League in the AFL. Started in Tulsa, went to Iowa, went out to Philly, 4 years in Cleveland, which is the reason that I'm still here in Cleveland today, and 2 years in Albany, where I won a championship and found the love of my life. And we moved back here a couple years ago, and that's why we're in Cleveland. And I started working full time at T3 Performance in 2017, and I've been there now since then. And I run a facility out in Beechwood. We are Beechwood, Ohio, east side of Cleveland. We are a performance facility for athletes as well as adults. And we'll talk about that eventually, how I work with adults and how I've trained adults for a long time. And I think what I think the best way to train adults is. But now I've been in the field 15 years, and I've seen a lot, and I've heard a lot, and I've worked with a lot, and I've learned a lot. And I want to be able to share that information. I have long form podcast style training that is on YouTube. So where I talk about training, what I'm doing, my thoughts and philosophies about training. So I'm not going to be talking about the same things, but we'll talk about things that dads can do immediately to improve athleticism. And we're going to talk about this through my lens, but also I plan on having tons of guests who are athletic dads and guests who I've talked to on the Cutoffs and Coffee podcast with my co-host, James DiBiasio, who is also an athletic dad and will be a guest on this show. But the first basically half of the podcast is going to be talking about training and exercise and physical fitness and what we can do as fathers to continue to improve athleticism as we age and as we have time constraints and other priorities with our children and our family and homes and businesses and things like that. So we're going to talk to some really, really athletic dads about what they do that separates them and what makes them athletic, and what things that they're pursuing and have been continue to be able to pursue as they've become fathers. And then the other half is I'm going to ask about fatherhood. And I'm going to talk about fatherhood. And being a father is almost my complete identity now. And it is my favorite, my hardest, my most challenging, my most loving, most incredible thing and experience that I've ever had. And again, I want to talk to our daughter, and I want to have conversations with individuals who have children, and I want them to be able to leave something for their kids. So in 10 years, they can watch this podcast and think, wow, that was really cool. Dad was talking to me. I was running around in the background playing and screaming. And look at me now as a 12-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 20-year-old. And it'll be cool for the kids to see how much their dads love them and how much they care about them, and how much we do for our children. I also have asked multiple times on the Cutoffs and Coffee podcast, when we have talked to fathers. Before I was a father, I would ask, what have you learned about yourself since you've become a father? And now I have so many more questions, but I just remember seeing these coaches on the other side of the screen, most of them bearded, strong, muscle bound, dominant, alpha, type A. When you ask them about their kids, they just lighten up. They almost transform. They become another avatar than the individual that they are in the gym. And it was always so cool for me to see these guys break down that wall and talk about being a father. And I always thought that was so cool. And for a long time, didn't think it was something that I was interested in and something that I wanted to do. So I was just asking because I felt like it was a interesting question to ask, but coming from someone who for 30 plus years didn't want to be a father, didn't think he was going to be a father, didn't think it was anywhere in his cards, didn't think it was anything he'd ever pursue. First, I have to say, I did meet the person who made me realize why people have children in the first place. So when I met my wife, I remember thinking, this is it. This is why people want to marry their best friend and make their twin and make their clone, because you see the good in this person, the great in this person, all the things that this person can accomplish. And then you put together your skill set and the reasons that that person loves you. And the thought and the idea of creating a child and then combining those two worlds is just a really cool, really exciting, and just fascinating meditation when you really think about it. And so it's cool for me as somebody who for 30 years, 32 years, didn't have any interest in having a family. I have an amazing family and I have incredible nieces and nephews and I love them with all my heart, and they're tattooed all over me. I just never thought it was for me. So now to be in this position, recording a podcast with a 6-month-old, and every day waking up so happy, so grateful, so blessed, so excited to see that little girl and see what she's going to learn today and what she's going to teach her mom and I today, is just such a cool experience for me. And I'm excited to talk to other people who have that experience and other people who've been through this experience, and excited to see exactly what I'm that. So I mentioned that I wanted to spend half the podcast talking about training, half the podcast giving fathers tasks that they can start to do immediately, the moment that they turn this podcast off and get to the gym, or as soon as they hear some of these suggestions, to start to work them into their lives and their training programs. And I've loved for 15 plus years working with dads in the field, in the fitness industry, that is. And I never understood what it was about dads that I so much appreciated. But now as I've become a dad, I've realized that these dads would always show up early. They would always be prepared and ready to train hard. They would always give me everything they had. They would always ask great questions, and they were always predictable. And I knew that they would show up the next day. And once I became a dad, I realized why all of these fathers are so consistent. And it's because we only give ourselves 2, sometimes 3, 4 hours a week to commit to ourselves, because we care more about our significant others than we do ourselves. And we care more about our children than we do ourselves. And a lot of times business and jobs and everything else, so many other priorities take over, that when we are able to dedicate short amounts of time to ourselves, we really give it everything we have. And that's what I so much appreciated about working with fathers. And so these are the people I want to talk to. And I also, in my experience, have gotten the opportunity to play at a very high level of football with some of the best players in the world. Now, I didn't play in the NFL. I played with a lot of teammates who played in the NFL. And I know, and I've trained a lot of guys who play in the NFL. And being in the Arena Football League, a lot of my teammates either came from the NFL or went to the NFL. But I say that to say the difference that I saw with some of these athletes and some of these individuals that I was playing with in the AFL compared to the guys in the NFL was just an opportunity. So I could name 5 to 10 players right off the top of my head who I know would have had amazing careers in the NFL if it weren't for a specific situation or an opportunity that they didn't get. So that's why I'm confident in saying that I've played with some of the best and top 1% of the players in the world. And even talking to them as they've become fathers, they've prioritized their training and their exercise and things that they would do for themselves, prioritized everything else. And I talked to some of these guys at 30 years old, 35 years old, almost 40 years old, and they tell me things like, man, I wish I could do that. I wish I was as good as I was when in my 20s. Oh, I wish I could dunk like that. Again, now that I'm 40, I've got all these other things going on. I haven't jumped in 10 years and I can't dunk anymore. And I remember thinking, like, these guys were the best, most athletic superhumans I'd ever come in contact with. And the fact that they can no longer do these things. It's not for a lack of knowledge. I mean, they train professionally. They train in high school. They train in college. It's not for lack of knowledge. That's not the reason why us fathers lose athleticism. It's because, one, we no longer think it's important. And that's a valid argument. It's not important until it is important. And I was a guest on a podcast a couple weeks ago, and I said, if you come home and your house is on fire, knock on wood, God forbid, you never end up in that situation, but you better be able to sprint up those stairs, and you better be able to throw your family members over your shoulder, and you better be able to carry them out the front door. You better be able to sprint to your animals and find your animals. You better be able to pick them up over your head as you jump over things and get out of the house. I mean, obviously this is worst case scenario, but these things come up every day. We are athletes. Human beings are athletes, and we need to train like them. But it's not just that. It's also when you go into a gym, you go into a 24-hour fitness or a Planet Fitness or a LA Fitness or any of these local Globo gyms. I say local because I'm naming ones in Cleveland, but these Globo type gyms where they're everywhere. You do a box jump, you do triple broad jumps, you do single leg, repeat non-alternating bounds. And people think you're weird. What is that? What are they training for? The zombie apocalypse? Yes. Well, yes, for sure, the zombie apocalypse. But people think it's so weird to train like an athlete because you're not on a sports team. But the research is going to show that's the best way to train for longevity, in health, in body composition. And I'm very specific when I talk about the athletic dad and what that means to me and how it's not the fit dad, right? It's not the 5K dad, because I'm sure there are plenty of dads out there who put way better 5K numbers on the board. But what happens when they have to pick something up and they're not strong enough to do that because they haven't trained for it? It's not the ripped dad or the lean dad. I mean, they're fit, but to get super lean, you got to be at a pretty big calorie deficit. So you don't feel good. Your brain isn't firing like it should. Your temperament isn't the same as it should be. So you're not going to show up as a great father like that. It's the athletic dad. It's the dads who can jump and sprint and throw and crawl and climb. Athletic dads are prepared for anything at all time. Those are the guys who I'm talking to. Those are the guys who I work with. Those are the guys who I want to inspire. Those are the guys who I see myself being and continuing to pursue training these qualities into my 80s, 90s, hundreds. There's no telling modern medicine. No telling how long we'll be here. So I'm very specific about what the athletic dad is and what the athletic dad is not. So we stop training because it's weird to some people to train like an athlete, not being on a team. So psychologically, there's something there that tells us, maybe we shouldn't do this. I'll just stick to the machines. I don't need to use barbells. I'll just go to Orange Theory. I'll just go to Burn Body Boot Camp and burn some calories, right? Because that's not weird. That's acceptable. And some people it could be for the lack of knowledge. So let's talk to all these people. Let's help all these people. And for this being the first episode, I feel like it's important that I share a quality that I believe is underdone, that people don't prioritize. And you can tell by the statistics that it's not prioritized, but we need to sprint again. We need to make sprinting a priority again. We need to make sprints fast again. Sprinting fast is, in my mind, one of the definitions or one of the pillars of being athletic. If you see somebody fast, the first two things you say are, wow, they're fast, and wow, they are athletic, or vice versa. It is one of the main pillars of athleticism. But again, it's weird. It's weird to go to LA Fitness and sprint. If you're at an LA Fitness, what you can do is crank that treadmill up, crank the incline up, and run 15, 20, 30-second intervals. It's not going to be max effort sprinting, but it's going to be better than not sprinting at all, especially if you're in somewhere cold or it's the winter. But nice little warm up, get the body sweating, and then hit a couple of those sprint intervals. I would never lead somebody down a bad path in this field. So with that in mind, if you haven't sprinted in a long time, 70%, 80% is going to be all you're going to need to hit for the first couple of weeks. You just want to get the rhythm back. You want to get the timing back. You want to get the expression of sprinting back, because it's going to be weird. I believe the statistics on it are after a week of sprinting, after a week of not sprinting, your max velocity goes down. So think of individuals who haven't sprinted in 10 years who want to try to go and sprint again. Let's go about 80 or 90%. 3 to 4 reps, incline pretty high. What that also is going to do is going to slow you down so you're not able to reach max effort and not able to hit your top speed. And that's what we're looking for as we're trying to slowly get sprinting back into the program. If you have a track or you have a nice place you could run outside, I like either percentage-based sprints. So again, 60, 70, 80% if you're new to it, or even better resisted sprints. So if you got a sled you can pull or a sled you can push, or even what we do at the gym is take those plyo boxes and put it on the turf. And those tend to slide pretty well. And you can sprint and push the plyo box behind. You want to limit yourself for the amount of speed that you can output. And you're going to do that for a month, do that for 6 weeks before you start lowering that treadmill or you start taking off resistance. And after 6 weeks or so of getting sprinting back, you can start to hit a little faster speeds, but it's demanding. I mean, the amount of force that you create when you're sprinting is more than you can create with any exercise in the weight room. So you could never deadlift the amount of force that you create when you're sprinting. So there's nowhere to train for sprinting besides sprinting. And if we're trying to get good at sprinting, sprinting is the thing. Sprinting is also the ultimate plyometric. So you're doing box jumps, you're doing single leg box jumps, you're doing broad jump repeats, anything like that. Sprinting is the shortest ground contact time exercise that you can do. So it's going to be amazing to help your plyometrics as well. And imagine if you were a dunker and you get back into it and you haven't dunked in a while, you get back into sprinting, body gets a little more powerful, you get to working with the barbell again, you do some isos for your calf and Achilles and quad and hamstrings and making sure everything is good and working well. And then you get back to dunking for the first time in 10 years. I mean, how much would you pay for a pill that would allow you to do that? Best thing is you can achieve that. Just takes a little bit of consistency and intent. So if you haven't sprinted in a long time and you're listening to this, go sprint either today or tomorrow or put it on the calendar to make it happen. The other half of the podcast, I'll be, like I'd mentioned, talking to these fathers about fatherhood and about how it felt to become a father. And if they remember that feeling when their baby was born, which, was only 6 months ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday. Some of these guys, with 10, 15, 20-year-old kids, be so interested to hear how well they remember that. And also what it means to them to be a father, be a leader of a house, leader of a household, to be in charge of protecting and providing for toddlers, children. Crazy. What a crazy task. What a hard thing to put on two people to be able to take care of somebody who can't take care of themselves. I mean, it's unbelievable to be blessed with an opportunity like that. I'm also interested in what these individuals do that allow them to be different than their peers. And a big thing with me playing professional football for 10 years was I could get away with training how I wanted to, sleeping how I wanted to, recovering how I wanted to, eating and drinking how I wanted to. When I was 22, 25, 28, I got to 29 and 30 years old, and I remembered I have people coming for my job. I have younger athletes coming into this sport every single day who want to do exactly what I do. And if they are better than me, I'm going to be out of a job. So I better figure some things out. So it was a bit of my ego. It was a bit of my upbringing. It was a bit of my identity and who I am as a person, but I was not going to let any of these individuals outwork me or even be a better player than me. So I had the excuse to continue to train like an athlete for a long time. I stopped playing at 32. I won a world championship with the Albany Empire of the Arena Football League when I was 32 years old. I'm 38 now. I know a lot of my teammates from that year haven't trained as they did when they were that age, but I haven't stopped, and I don't ever see myself stopping. Knowing what I know, being in the field that I'm in, being ahead of the research, seeing subjectively every single day what this style of training does for individuals and their lifestyle. It's something that I do that separates me from other fathers, and I'm very proud of it. And finally, I had mentioned that it's really important for me to allow my guests to leave something for their kids, whether their kids are old enough to understand it and find it now, or 10 years from now, like I assume about when my daughter is going to find these things. I want them to be able to leave something for their kids, because ultimately when you become a father, you have to understand and consider your life. You have to realize that best case scenario that you leave this earth before your children do. And that's the hope. So at some point way down the line, I'm not going to be here and my guests are not going to be here, but I want them to have something, and I want their kids to have something that they can always look back on and remember them by. And this is a constant meditation for me, but I hope that by the time my daughter finds this, she realizes how important she is to my wife and I. I hope she realizes that she is the most important thing. She is the number one priority, the number two priority, the number three priority. She is the reason we get out of bed every day. She is the reason we go to work. She is the reason decide how to pursue things in our discretionary time. She's upstairs asleep right now, and it would be very easy for me to be scrolling on social media, but I feel like this is so much more important. And I hope our daughter is proud of the woman that she's become and the woman that she will be. And I'm sure there's going to be a time where her parents are no longer going to be cool and she will have some hesitation in sharing things with us. And she will think that things that she's pursuing or that she loves or that she likes to do might be judged by her parents. And I want her to know that we just want what's best for her. And that's what every father wants. But I think it's important for us to share that information with our children and let them know. And hopefully by the time she comes across stuff like this and this entire YouTube channel and these podcasts, who knows how many will be in by then, how many people we would have talked to, how we would have grown as an individual by then. But I hope she could be proud of us, her parents. And I hope she could think, wow, they've done a really great job. And hopefully she knows how much we love her. So that's what the Athletic Dad podcast is all about. And I hope that it connects with a few people. And I know that I've got some amazing guests coming up. Some dads who, I mean, I can't even believe I get the opportunity to communicate with. I've already talked to some guys who are going to come on here who are just really, really special human beings. And I've only talked to them about training and power cleans and squats and sets and reps, but I've never asked them about being a father. So I'm really excited to share those moments. So if you are interested in what we are talking about here on this podcast, and if this is something that you think might connect with you, then please follow along with the podcast. If you have individuals who are athletic dads who you think need to hear some of this stuff, send them the podcast. If you have individuals who are athletic dads who you think would be able to share some pretty incredible stories about training and fatherhood on here, please send them my information and I'll reach out, because I want to talk to people all over the world, because I know there are athletic dads everywhere. So if you are interested in coming along for the ride, it would be my absolute pleasure to have you. And I leave every podcast and every video saying the same three things. And as long as these things are important to me, I'll continue to say them. But I ask you to continue to practice gratitude, to tell the people that you love them, and to live your life stimulated. We'll see you guys on the next one.